Live from the Clarity from Chaos studios, heard worldwide, it's Dave Campbell. On every episode, Dave and his guests explore, discuss, and work on solutions to some of life's biggest challenges. So, if you're ready, be prepared to be enlightened, amused, and even shocked by what you hear. And now, the real, the authentic, the one and only Dave Campbell.
Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Dave Campbell, and you're listening to Clarity from Chaos. If you're new to the show and like what you hear, take a moment to go out to my website on Substack. The site address is clarityfromchaos.substack.com. There you can listen to the archive shows, see the upcoming guests, and if you choose, you can support the show by clicking the subscribe button. Before we move on, though, I am sure many of you are extremely concerned about the direction of our country right now. I know I am. We need to refocus, however, with the understanding that this has become no longer a political issue, but one of good versus evil. We need to once again embrace the church and the Bible. We can win this battle with God's help. So with that said, I would like to share a scripture. This is from Jeremiah chapter 19, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. We are incredibly pleased to welcome to Clarity the author of the best-selling book, Outcast, How the Radical Left Tried to Destroy a Young Conservative, Miss Gloria. Gloria is the founder of the Reagan Society and a vote Christian conservative. Welcome to the show, Gloria.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Let's kind of get started into, if you would take a moment or a few moments and explain the Reagan Society, what compelled you to found it and the vision of the Reagan Society.
The Reagan Society is an organization I founded this year because I feel that politics should be affordable for everyone. I think it's very important that everyone, all Republicans, be a part of a conservative conversation. And it's wonderful that we have politicians that go to many different places, and for $50,000 or $100,000, you can shake their hand and meet them. But the average Republican voter cannot afford that, especially younger people who we do lose to the left because they do have more events that are affordable. So the Reagan Society brings in people like border czar Tom Homan right before he became our border czar. And he spoke to 350 people in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, for $25 if they're under the age of 40 and $50 if they're over the age of 40. So young people, anywhere between, 16 and 40, were able to hear from our border czar for $25. And if we do not make politics affordable for everyone, we will lose those voters to the left, or they just won't vote. But the left has a way of bringing people in and uniting them and bringing them in to hear their speakers at a lesser cost. So we as Republicans need to fight back and do the same thing if we would like to win, especially in the midterms coming up.
Well, I think the other side of the aisle does a lot of pandering. I think other than our president, the use of social media is probably not as well adapted as the Democrats. And the whole idea about the communication, which kind of is going to lead me into another question a little bit later. We just need to do a hell of a lot better job of communicating, and not people like I'm beginning to believe that there's no difference between the elephants and the jackasses other than the two terms, because if you just change the clothing, they're all looking the same these days. They're not, the only difference is one thinks they can manage the mess better than the other, but they've both created the mess. So I think the Republicans, for all of their success, which is basically Donald Trump's at this point, they need to do a hell of a lot better job of communicating and not just complaining that the media because it's a foregone conclusion. You and I both know that the media is carrying the water for the Democrats, and probably has for the last 60, 70 years. And it's only going to get worse because we've gone from 50 media companies down to 5 or 6 media companies now. So we have 5 or 6 CEOs and their ideology basically controlling everything you see, read, and hear in this country. Other than this, a few of us poor little podcasters that are out there that aren't part of that umbrella. Even the larger podcasters are becoming part of that umbrella. So I agree with you if the vision of the Reagan Society is to make conservatism more consumable, right? More, you're able to understand it because obviously the schools are not teaching civics. And to your point, you brought Tom Homan in, night after night, we hear, people protesting what Tom Homan and DHS is doing. And the fact that they're just enforcing the law on the books seems to get washed down the road. Nobody really understands that all they're doing is supporting the legislated law about all about, you know, we're destroying families, so on and so forth. So I think communication is key, Gloria. Absolutely. You guys had quite a scare there around Nashville here lately, right? Because you almost brought another socialist into the fray and dodged a little bit of a bullet there.
Well, yes and no. I mean, unfortunately, Congressman Mark Green did step down, but we had an excellent candidate in Matt Van Epps. And to have a special election called, the timing was crazy. I mean, right after Thanksgiving, right before Christmas, the weather was unseasonably cold. To get people out to vote is a difficult thing, especially when it's not a presidential year and it wasn't a midterms, one election. So we did take the seventh by 9 points. Yes, Mark Green took it by 22 points, but it was a presidential year. So I have no doubt that Matt will, who's a friend of mine, who will take, he'll run again, in a year. And I have no doubt that he will take the seventh again. But the greater question is, how is it that we keep the seventh in every other district in Tennessee, not in every other state that's red? The larger problem is we saw how many communists came out. Democrats are communists. I lived in a communist country. They're communists. So it's interesting how many people Afton Bain was able to reach. And those voters, I mean, it's amazing how many voters turned out for her. And yeah, 9 points is close, but it's an excellent win for us considering the timing. However, it's frightening how many Democrats came out, how many communists actually believe what she's saying. I mean, she point blank told everyone she hated Nashville. She hates the people she represents. She hates the city she represents. She hates country music. She hates everything about being here. She is not a Christian. She is a pro abortion advocate. This is Tennessee. This is definitely the Bible Belt. We do not believe in anything that she does. So I have to wonder, what is she doing here? And then I answer that question with, there are so many communists moving into red states. While many people are coming here to escape California, Illinois. I'm an Illinoisan. They're coming here to escape the blue, regime they were living under. But many of them are also coming here and bringing their values in. And that's something we learned during this election.
No, absolutely. And you hit on a really, really important point that I've been trying to get across now for months is it's not the rise of the DSA that scares me. It's the fact of the support for the DSA that scares me.
Which takes me back to you saying social media. Social media
Yeah.
is where we are lacking. We have no messaging. We have no branding. We have nothing on TikTok. I saw Kai Trump. I'm not on TikTok, but somebody reposted it on some other form of social media. And Kai Trump is doing a great job. But once again, like you said, we cannot rely on one person. I mean, Donald Trump is our leader. And I mean, I was proud to be an elected delegate at large for the state of Tennessee, and I served on platform. for President Trump, and I would gladly do it again. But he cannot be the only one who is guiding us. We need an army of Donald Trumps. He is one person, and we cannot expect him to he cannot carry everything upon his shoulders. We all need to jump in. So it is people like you and I who are, a part of
Right.
that. And when I met with him at the golf club, I mean, he's an amazing, very personable man. We had a one-on-one. I mean, he's just a wonderful human being who I wish people could actually see who he truly is instead of who the left, I mean, mainstream media, who the left makes him out to be a horrible monster. And I mean, this man truly has a love for America that has never been seen since perhaps Ronald Reagan. And we need to work with him. Instead, we have people who are complacent. I mean, many red states are very complacent. And in blue states, where I'm from, where I also do I do politics up there too. And I am actually a vice president for the Illinois Federation of Republican Women. And we are bringing in more and more red voters every day because we do want to flip the state. So we are not complacent in Illinois. But in red states, yes, many people are complacent and they think nothing can flip them. It only takes one election to start losing. And if we do not keep Congress for President Trump at the midterms, he will not be able to get anything accomplished and he becomes a lame duck president. We can't have that.
Absolutely not. And that's the other scary thing that we're facing down right now is the midterms. And all we're gonna see for the final 2 years are going to be impeachment, articles of impeachment every other day. And God forbid we lose the Senate as well, because if we lose the Senate and the House, then it's going to be all over. They're going to spend the next 2 years undoing what Trump has done the last. So, and I don't know, Gloria, maybe you've got some insight to this. I do not know why the Republicans are so reluctant to end the filibuster, because you could end the filibuster. And that doesn't mean you could not, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I believe you could reinstate it at a period of time after you got every damn thing done that you needed to get done, right? Before the midterms. But for some reason, Thune and the rest of them do not want to end the filibuster. And to my knowledge, they haven't even codified what Elon Musk and his team found as far as corruption and all the bad things that they've been doing with the taxpayer dollar. They haven't done anything with that yet either, as well as finalize and get all of the nominations that Trump's put out there done and taken care of. So I have three concerns. One's the midterms. One we've already talked about, but the third piece is how do we, other than the communications piece that we talked about, how do we get people to start paying attention to this? Because part of the reason we're where we're at is people haven't been paying attention. They've been thinking that they elect somebody and then they just go on about their business. They have a political moment when they walk in and drop their ballot in the box or click the machine lever, whatever they do. And that's the end of it. That's the beginning and the end of it. They have no more thought about how this country is being run, its moral outcomes, its ethics, or anything else. And that bothers me and scares me, just like, the rise of the DSA more than anything, is that people's nonchalant attitude to our country.
I think that may be changing soon. We all have a front row to what is going to be happening in New York City in a couple of weeks. I do believe when a communist Islamist mayor takes over, I think everybody will be watching to see what happens. And as someone who lived in a communist country, I was born in America, but I grew up in communist Yugoslavia and I attended school there. I can tell you, communism is not free healthcare. It is not free tuition. It is not free housing. It is not free anything. What communism is a way of keeping you trapped for life. And that's it. When I was in first grade, I would walk to school every day and I would have in my backpack which we called a book bag back then, aging myself, but it's true. And I had 1,000 US dollars with me every single time I left the house. And I had to, because in case of civil war, which is very common in communist countries, in case of civil war, something bad is about to happen. I knew at the age of 6 how to get out of Yugoslavia and get to Italy, where one of my aunts would find me. There was always a cab waiting for me at the end of a block where my school was. And that $1,000 would keep me safe and it would get me out of there. And my parents would meet me when they could. And also, the police officers, they don't work for citizens. They don't work for you and me like they do now here in our country, our great America. They work for the government and they are there to make sure that no one speaks ill of the dictator of communism at the time when I lived there. It was Josip Broz Tito, and Broz means brother. And basically, he wanted to be embraced by everyone as a family member, when in reality, he was a terrible dictator. So I do think that when Mandami gets into New York City's, mayoral office, I do think that we will wait and see and sit back and have a front row to what it is. But he's promised free groceries, and I've already heard he's taken that promise back. So I think New York, there'll be a mass exodus. I mean, I see it already. A lot of my friends are moving to Florida, which is a swing state. Let's be honest, it's a swing state. So some of them are probably going to end up in Tennessee as well. But I think it'll be interesting to see what he does. But communism also works to tear apart the nuclear family. And I see that happening in every state, be it blue or red. And that's very
Right.
interesting as well. The nuclear family is being torn apart. And as you said at the beginning of your program, it's very difficult to say who's sitting on what side of the aisle. Just like with families, it's very difficult. Families that are all conservative are having issues, even with each other, because of the different branches of how conservative are you. And that should never happen in any family. But even we, as conservative Republicans, are making it easier for Democrats, for communists to take our families over, because they are dividing us, because they are slowly but surely infiltrating every aspect. They're in our churches, they're in our schools, they're in our everyday lives, they're at work, they're everywhere. Even when they call themselves Republicans, they are not true conservatives. They are not constitutional Christian, Judeo Christian conservatives. They are not. And that's a huge problem, even in our own conservative branch.
Well, and I attribute a lot of that. Well, I attribute to two things. I attribute it, number one, to social media, which I think is a cancer, but we have allowed it, right? It's just like the use of cell phones and kids on cell phones walking around constantly. If they can't even have a face-to-face conversation for God's sake anymore, it's all texting. But we have driven the whole concept of conflict so deep into the psyche of our kids that they can't deal with conflict anymore. We've taken failure off the table because we've developed participation trophies, but we have done that. We have done that. And I think part of the solution, as I mentioned in the monologue, part of the solution is the church to put their big boy pants on and to step up and become the church of the 1800s, if you will, where politics are preached from the pulpit in conjunction with the scripture. And all you have to do is open the Bible, open a couple of the first books of the Bible to understand where the majority or the base framework of our laws came from. And I hate to explain this to some people, but there weren't a lot of different colors or whatever that came across on the Mayflower, right? We were predominantly Judeo-Christians that put their boot on that rock and settled the country. Now, yeah, there's been a lot of missteps. There's been a lot of bad things that have happened. But rewriting history is not proper. We need to frame things back into the reality that it really exists. Even the term for the slavery, the whole slavery issue needs to be taught factually and not what we're hearing today. And certainly not listening to Jasmine Crockett explain to us what's right and what's wrong. But unfortunately, because of social media, the ideology that permeates social media seems to have replaced any kind of thinking mechanism with a lot of people, and not just young people. You have a lot of 35-year-olds out there that allow social media or the media in general to do their damn thinking for them.
You have a lot of people that are even older than that who actually
Yeah,
are attached to their phones because we live in a lonely society and people are living longer. And I have a friend whose dad is 88 years old and he gets his news on social media, which, depending on who he's following, is right or wrong. But back to your point, I do feel that social media is the downfall of our society. No, young people do not know how to converse. They do not have normal relationships. I mean, their relationships are based on texting back and forth. And I mean, that's crazy to me. So they don't know how to communicate. And that turns it into communication between a Republican and a Democrat. It turns it into a fight because neither side knows how to communicate the way Charlie Kirk did. Charlie Kirk, who also, lived 20 minutes away from, where we did. Charlie Kirk, and God rest his soul, that man didn't want to fight with anyone. All he wanted to do was understand where the other side was coming from and explain his stance. So we don't have anyone to replace Charlie. Yeah, there's a lot of people
no,
who want to, but there will never
no,
be another Charlie Kirk. He was a fair man and he understood how important it was to have a conversation. But unfortunately, we've lost that. And I do hope that parents, I know a lot of parents and grandparents who have babies, newborn babies, and the first thing in the nursery is an iPad. And that way the child can be entertained in their crib. And when did we start doing that?
right.
I mean, I just don't
Yep.
get it. So who is babysitting? Because to me, an iPad is a babysitter or a laptop or a phone. That's a babysitter. Who is babysitting our kids and how are we monitoring that? Which also goes to our school systems. Who is looking out for what are our teachers teaching? Who's looking out for our children that are attending school? I mean, my children, my husband, myself, we all went to private schools where it was significantly easier to go into a classroom, into a school building, and you could listen in. You could learn what your teachers were teaching your children. Of course, my children are 36, 33, and 26. So it's a little while back. And it's interesting to me that in many states, in many counties, even as a school board member, an elected school board member, that school board member is not allowed access into schools freely to be able to walk in. And I mean, properly vetted, these people are safe to walk in and be able to hear what teachers are teaching. And that's where parents have failed us. Parents do not go on field trips anymore. They do not volunteer because both parents have to work. But that's still no excuse. Parents need to be more involved in what their kids are learning in school because whatever it is they're learning in school is killing us, as yesterday's event with, at Brown University. I mean, that's horrible, absolutely horrible. And I mean, in Tennessee, the Covenant school shooting, I mean, this is just, it needs to stop. And it's also influencing our children. I mean, I don't have all the details on how Rob Reiner was killed yesterday by his own son, supposedly. That's all. I don't have all of it. But I have read stories, which this is not factual. So I just want to put that out there. But was his son transitioning? I mean, we knew his son had some drug issues. But this is what social media and our public school system is teaching our children.
Right.
Families,
Right.
once again, we go to the point of families have lost direction, be it liberal or conservative. They are no longer a family unit. But that is a goal for liberals. That is a goal for communists to tear apart families. But we're allowing it to happen even in conservative families. And if your schools aren't letting you come in and know what your teachers are teaching your kids, get your kid out of ed school. Maybe homeschooling is a better way to go. And if it's not possible, maybe a home pod of some kind, maybe a private school if you can afford it. But our children are the next generation. And if they are taught incorrect history, you brought up history. Why did we tear down all those statues? We have a school here, a prominent school in Nashville, that actually tore down a statue of George Washington, our first president of the United States, a very prestigious school. How did we as parents allow this to happen? Yes, it was a crazy time and BLM and COVID, and after what happened to my son at his school, we really need to step up as parents. And I started speaking 2 years ago because that's when, I mean, I've been a lifelong Republican. My first campaign was 1984, Ronald Reagan, George Bush. And that was high school going into college. And I loved every moment of it. But there wasn't the same hatred as there is now. So now we
No.
need to ask ourselves, where do we go to be able to win again after President Trump is done being president with his term? When he's done, are we going to be able to have a Republican in the White House again? If we have as many communists winning in various states, the answer is no.
No.
We need to fight now and save our children because they are the future of our country. I mean, I'm getting old, people are getting older, but we need to have our children understand the truth and history. You're right. Being taught correctly is the most important part, but we've taken history out of schools. We're teaching a new history, and I'll give you a case in point on that. In my book, which you mentioned, Outcast: How the Radical Left Tried to Destroy a Young Conservative, which is only available on my website because I am termed a radical. So it's available at outcastbook.com. But I had a dean from Belmont University, which is a Christian conservative university. And my son was student body president, and everyone knew my son was a conservative Christian. And everyone knew he was a Republican as he was working for Senator Blackburn while he was in college. And amazingly, a dean called me after my son put up a post of himself standing in front of the White House, just a regular picture that I took of him when we were in DC. And on the 4th of July, he posted that he was proud and thankful for our forefathers for founding our country and giving us our freedoms on the 4th of July, which to you and I is a normal thing. Fortunately, my son posted this on Instagram, but I guess it's fortunate because we see what's out there. And he had it's his public personal Instagram page. 300 comments, go kill yourself, you're a terrible person. The next day, there's a change.org petition. I call the school to find out what they're going to do to keep my son safe when they go back to school. There are no answers for me. But I did have a dean reach out to me. DEI, I call it DIE, D-I-E, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And she called me to ask me if I understood why my son was under attack at Belmont University. And I said, no, my son is an American, a proud American, celebrating the 4th of July as God intended us to do. And she asked me is it that was free on the 4th of July? And I told her America was freed from the tyranny of Great Britain. And she said, what about Black people? And I said, with all due respect, I think that you have your holidays confused. I do believe the 4th of July is celebrating America's freedom. And I do believe you're confusing it with the Emancipation Proclamation signed by Republican President Lincoln. She had nothing to say except for one thing. I want you and your son to come to my office and be schooled by me. And I said, I went to a university that's nationally recognized, and I was a poli-sci major. And I do believe that I was taught history correctly, and I am now going to terminate this conversation. And I did. Don't tell me how to think. Now, if this is a dean at a Christian conservative university, imagine what they are teaching at public schools. And
Absolutely.
no one's calling them out. And here I am, the bad guy. Yeah, I get emails and I get texts and I get horrible messages all the time. But if we as parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever it is, if we do not step up now and try to change our school systems, and yes, bring God back to schools. I mean, Belmont claims to be a conservative Christian school. At least I didn't see
No,
change.
no. Yeah, no, there's a lot of there's a lot of wannabe Christian schools out there that if you pull the covers back, Gloria, they're not anywhere near what you would assume that they are. And case in point, Belmont, there shouldn't have been even any question about any of that. And unfortunately, what you have is somebody that's woke up to the eyeballs, DEI up to the eyeballs, and they try to walk this line that they've conceived that their superiority is such that all of us that think differently, unfortunately, than they do, are just automatically incorrect. And just like you did, you cite chapter and verse about history that they misquote or have tried to rewrite. Doesn't work at all. And it's happened time and time again. And more importantly, it is part of the plank of the Communist Party, of the DSA, to destroy the family, destroy the church, create the chaos so that they can move in and people can. And what you end up with at the end of the day is a Momdani of mayor of New York City. Now, I will say, just in retrospect, I think New York City is going to bitch slap him into the point where he's not going to be all the communist that he wants to be. But it's going to take a little bit. And you're right. We're going to have a front row seat on watching the people of New York City and Wall Street explain to him how the bread gets made. And it's going to be a lot different than what I'm sure he thinks it's going to be, or what explained to all of these young people with all the free giveaway crap is going to be, right?
I think it's going to be a little different. I think that it's going to be a wake up call to people living there. And I think once wealthy people and people who are paying the higher tax dollars on their real estate and homes and whatnot, I think that once they bolt out of New York City, it's going to leave everyday people having to pay more money. And I think that's what's going to end up doing him in. But I just want
Yeah.
to add one thing. Belmont University sided with the left completely. Our son was escorted by a police officer when he was on campus. And I want to just shine some light upon that, because this was in 2020, 5 years ago during COVID. And now, 5 years later, Charlie Kirk is dead. So instead of going in the opposite direction, when I, wrote my book 2 years ago and I started speaking and whatnot, many people, Charlie was speaking on it. So many of us were. And instead of going in a direction of, yes, we need to be teaching better values and working on our school system, Charlie Kirk is now dead. So I think that by the same token, I think you're right. New York will be a lesson, and I think Mandami will be gone. I think that they'll eat him up. I mean, there's nothing that he can possibly give to New York City that is going to allow any assistance.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And God willing, we'll get a governor in New York State that's going to shut him down completely.
Yeah, one can only hope. So how is the book doing? I've been running you off into the field on the left and the right. How is the book?
The book is Tennessee is a one party consent state. So in the state of Tennessee, you can record, can tape, you can do anything you want without the other party knowing you're doing it. So fortunately, my son and I were able to record every meeting, every email that was sent to him. Everything is in the book. So the book, it has pictures in it as well. So the book is doing very well, and we're in our second edition now. And it's interesting to me that the administrators nobody's reached out to me. No one can sue me because it is a one party consent state. And there are 3 different entities that did go against my son. The administration all across the board failed my son, but they protected the left. When you read it, you will be shocked at what goes on at universities, and you'll be shocked at professors emailing back and forth and using people's names and basically wanting to turn students who are our children, against each other. It's amazing. And no, obviously, I never got a call back from the university president. And if parents and trustees would actually look into who their university presidents are, they would know what kind of a primary ticket they're pulling. And in this case, the president of overall of the school was a Democrat. He was pulling a Democrat primary ballot in the state of Tennessee, but president of a conservative Christian university. How is that even fathomable? I mean, it, it's amazing to me that we, as voters, as citizens of this great country, are not looking into people enough. We have to vet everyone we can, anyone. You said, once again, I'm going to go back to sometimes we can't tell who's sitting on what side of the aisle because there are these deals made. And we need true conservatives to step up to the plate and actually run and run our country the way that our forefathers intended it to be, as my son was celebrating on the 4th of July.
I completely agree. And I would put a small preface in the word conservative because I think there can be Democrat conservatives as well as Republican conservatives.
Yes, but the difference
And
is who's saving babies and who's killing them. That is my
exactly.
real concern.
Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. And then that rolls over into a church issue that, even if you look at the Catholic Church, they put up with all of this silliness. We've got a Mamdani issue coming up next year in Los Angeles, where the feckless mayor right now of Los Angeles, the DSA is running somebody up against her, and it would not surprise me, given the people of California, that she doesn't get elected because she's going to do the same damn thing. She's going to be giving away housing. She's going to be giving away transportation and everything else in the city of Los Angeles. So it wouldn't surprise me, once again, that the two largest areas in our country will be dominated by DSA.
I
Won't
agree.
surprise
Yeah, I agree.
me a bit.
It won't surprise me either. And after that, I have to wonder about Chicago, which is basically headed in that direction. I'm actually from a suburb of
Yeah.
Chicago, but it's headed in the
Yeah.
same direction. I don't recognize my city anymore. And I went to school downtown and I don't recognize my city anymore, but it is a beautiful city and it needs to be saved. So we
Yeah.
need good people to step up. Education is key. But we need to start bringing civics classes, history the way it actually did occur. We need to start bringing in parents who are going to complain and take their kids out of school if the truth is not being taught. And we need to bring families back together. And also, we need to bring God back into people's lives. That is the most important thing we can possibly do. God and forgiveness. And we need to give people some grace and we need to start understanding a little bit more of how young people are being influenced because they are the next generation. They are the ones who are going to be running the next. I mean, they are JD.
Well, absolutely.
I mean,
But we need to,
it's a great example of someone who had a very difficult childhood, who persevered, who served our country, who's serving our country again now. But he's going to be the next one that, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who want to kill him too. I mean, if you do speak these days, you and I both know you're under fire. So I do understand there is a fear factor with parents, there's a fear factor with young people. But as Charlie said, we have to let God lead us. We have to have more faith in that. And I do know that Charlie is in a better place right now than he was here.
yeah, but that goes back to what I said. The church needs to step up because the church has swallowed the woke Kool-Aid completely. And then you support that with their being fearful of somebody taking away their tax shelter for being a church. So, they won't discuss politics at all from the pulpit. If they do, it's just a little bit. Where back when I was younger, they brought up social issues and everything else and supported it with text from the Bible. I was just sitting here thinking, with the murder of Charlie Kirk, what would have happened to a William F. Buckley? Because, back when I was very, very much younger, they used to have point, counterpoint. They used to have the firing line where you could get on and have honest debate and it would be televised. You would witness point, counterpoint, one side versus the other side. And were able to make some kind of decision out of it. They don't have that anymore. What you have now is the view, and you have somebody standing up with an applause sign, and you have a bunch of these witless people in the audience that are clapping when the sign goes up. And quite frankly, I just wonder, Gloria, if they even know what they're applauding.
No, no, they don't. They just they want their,
They just react to it.
they want their
Yeah,
2 seconds on TV, and that's it. I think that right now in this country, we have a lot of people who just wanna get famous for doing nothing, and, I mean, it's easy to see, look at TikTok. I mean, look at how many people accomplish absolutely nothing, have no message to give, but they're still famous on TikTok. So I have to wonder how many of our young people are actually learning something from that. But you're right, though. I mean, the church does need to step up. I do think that, I mean, to me, pro life is not, I mean, that is also a medical issue. That is not even the church. I do feel strongly that if people knew, if they could see, if women could see, can hear their baby's heartbeat. And you can hear them so early on now, much earlier than even when I was pregnant, because my children are older. I do feel so strongly that if a mom could hear that baby and know that it's not, a bunch of cells, as they will tell you if you go to, one of those clinics, but
right.
I do feel so strongly that as a mother, you can disagree with your children, but how can you kill your own baby? What kind of a sick society do we live in to want to kill our own children that are growing inside of us? That's not just a
Well,
thing, that's murder too.
well, true. And when I say and use the word church, I fully recognize that there's a lot of subtle things around all of that. But if I look at it in general, the church should not be supporting abortion. Now, there's aspects of it, right? If a little girl is raped or what, there's aspects around all of that. But in general, the church needs to step up. They need to quit worrying about who they're going to piss off because they're supporting a biblical view. They need to stop worrying about that and start supporting the biblical view,
They also
right?
need to have alternatives. I mean, I think a lot
Yeah,
of times we lose a lot of Republicans because of that issue. So I do think that we need to talk about alternatives. Not every woman who is pregnant is ready to be a mom. I mean, you mentioned, a 15-year-old girl. She's not ready to be a mom. She's not equipped for that. But there are so many people in this wonderful country who are unable to conceive. There's nothing wrong with adoption. There are so many couples waiting on lists to adopt children. So why can't we push adoption over abortion? Maybe if we segue a little bit into, different means and give them alternatives, maybe that would help us as well. And maybe that's something that should be talked about from the pulpit on Sundays. We have
yeah.
a solution for you. I mean, it's a different kind of solution, but we have a solution for you and we will help you. And tell me people like you and I would not monetarily support someone like that.
Absolutely.
And there
Absolutely.
are these couples that want to have children so badly, and unfortunately, one reason or another cannot. So I do think that family, if we go back to the backbone of family being the most important thing for a church, a family can be a mom, a dad, and an adopted child. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, even in my family, my husband adopted my son from a previous marriage. There is nothing wrong with adoption. I applaud people who will step in for someone who is unable to fulfill their obligation. And I'm sorry, if you're having sex and you're young, you be prepared to get pregnant and have that baby and not kill that child. Otherwise, you have no business having sex.
Exactly. So again, where can people find the book? You mentioned it before. It's on your website, on the Outcast website.
It's outcastbook.com. That's simpler than my whole name. My full name is also my website, gloriagiorno.com. But Outcast Book, outcastbook.com is also where they can get a book.
Ah, it's great. Gloria, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I just sit here and would continue to rattle on through the night, but I know you probably have other things to do. So, but it's been an absolute pleasure. We've been talking to Gloria Giorno, who is the author of Outcast, How the Radical Left Tried to Destroy a Young Conservative. Very important read, and I would encourage everybody to go to the website and order the book. But again, it's been an absolute pleasure, Gloria, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time greatly, and I appreciate everything you're doing for our country. So thank you.
All right, take care.
You too.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Have a great Christmas.
Thank you. I will. I hope you will as well.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more Clarity from Chaos shows on demand, go to clarityfromchaos.buzzsprout.com or send Dave an email at info@clarityfromchaos.com for information on previous shows. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Twitter, or Google Podcast. Until next time, please remember, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Be well, everyone.